All right, guys, welcome back. Good night, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever it is for you. Hope everything's going well. Got a new setup for myself, as you can see. Got my headphones back and working. Got my brand new microphone, which allows me to sound, as Alex and Trey would say, a lot crisper. So I like that. Got my money's worth and this. Using my laptop this time around, so the new change for me, but oh, and also a new Falcons cup that came in for me. So starting off a lot of things fresh. So, anyways, guys, how you guys been? Trey, Alex.
Pretty good. Just waiting on draft day. It's taking too long. When I mean too long, I mean way too long.
It really is. It
We
really is
got 8
taking long.
days.
Like it's too
8 days.
long. Shorten it to like 2 days. I need results now.
We got
I
8
mean,
days
we're
left.
kind of. I mean, when I texted you earlier, I said we're kind of stuck till draft weekend. I mean, like we're stuck till draft weekend because nothing really happens unless like a swap picks like the Saints did. There's nothing that really happens during that last week before the draft. But of course, with this offseason, you have Debo Samuel and AJ Brown wanting to leave their respective teams. So, maybe a little different,
And McLaurin a little bit
and McLaurin.
for
All these wide receivers moving in different places. Getting crazy.
Yeah.
yeah. Had to do that. All right. So let's start off this conversation with a question from the Daily Talon. It said, "Trade back and take London/Williams. What do you guys think?" So either trading back. I want more to that question because I want to know where you're trying to take him at, right? Because if it's
Yeah.
Drake London, that's one thing. If it's Jameson Williams,
Jameson
that's another
Williams.
thing.
I mean, to
hmm
be
I
honest,
mean,
not really, because from what Ian and Adam and a lot of people have been saying about the draft is that a lot of teams inside the top 25 think Jamison Williams as like either the best wide receiver or the second best behind Garrett Wilson. But Drake London isn't that far either. So of course you still have teams like Saints that could trade up. You got the Eagles right there. You got us right there. You have the Jets right there. The thing is, if you're trading back, that pick has to be somewhere like the Vikings pick right there. Because if you trade back farther than that, you're not getting either one of those players, probably, to be honest.
hmm Yeah. It's kind of ironic because when I was first, or not first, but towards like when our season was over and the off season began, I was a high advocate for both of these players, Williams and Drake London. But
okay,
quite
sorry to cut
frankly,
you
if
off,
I
but you
were,
saying to pick 15 and 16 around there.
Oh yeah,
uh,
you're not getting either one of them there. Because
yeah,
if you're trading back with the Eagles, they're taking one of those two, and then the Jets are
Or
taking.
what? Saints is 16.
Yeah, Saints.
mm,
Yeah, you're not getting either one of those players there. You might as
more than
well
likely.
stick at 8 because the thing is, but not to interrupt Alex, but the thing is, you have to think. You trade back to 15 with the Eagles, they're not going to take unless Ahmad Gardner is there or Derek Stingley. I mean, probably Gardner's probably going to no. I mean, Stingley's probably going to be there, but I haven't heard much of them wanting him. But you see how much the Eagles like they've every wide receiver that's been traded this offseason or that's looking to be traded like Devo, AJ, and Terry McLaurin. The Eagles and the Saints are in all of those conversations. So they're looking for a wide receiver one or at least a complementary number two. And when you have that right there, it's kind of if you trade back with either one of those teams, they're probably going to take the wide receiver you want at pick 8. So there's no if you're going to trade back to like I say what was I'd like the Commanders pick at 11 because I heard they're trying to trade up for secondary help. So Kyle Hamilton might fall. Of course, Derek Stingley's most likely going to be there. Never know. We've seen reaches like Trent McDuffie. Somebody might view Trent McDuffie as a top 10 pick. So you can have all of that. But if you're going to trade back, the two main spots will be 11 and 12 because the Vikings and the Commanders sit right there in both of those. I mean, you could say the Commanders need a wide receiver, but I don't really think they need a first round wide receiver. Like definitely second round, to help Terry out. But first rounder probably no. So if you're trying to trade back, 11 and 12 is the main spots. 15 and 16, you're screwing yourself up right there because both of those players are going to be gone.
So Trey, I'm trying to figure out about your audio.
This is so messed up. I swear, StreamYard just hates us, man. It's every week.
Yeah. Every week there's like a problem.
Look, I mean, I can still hear you just fine. It's just there's a bit more static than before.
I'm gonna just restart it.
He kind of agrees. All right, we'll still be here.
All right, I'm going to restart it for a second.
Gotcha. All right.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I had another update from my laptop, and it was kind of like bugging out a little bit, so didn't really catch the back half of what he said. So let's just go ahead and move on. We got one from Floyd saying, "How would you gents rate our free agency?"
I don't think we actually did the best. I think we did good. I don't think we did the best that we could have. Me personally, I like Casey Hayward, but he's not my favorite corner simply because we struggled with getting off the field in third down, specifically in man coverage situations, and Casey Hayward isn't a man coverage corner, so or at least not a good one, at least in press. And off, it's a tad bit of a different story, but he's still not great in that aspect either. We brought Eric Harris back, who gets torched in man coverage. We didn't really get a nose tackle to fulfill the role that Mike Pennell had. We got one edge rusher who practically doesn't change anything for us. We got Auden Tate, who I'm hoping for the best, but that's not really good. And we got a whole bunch of slot / slow Z receivers. So I'm not entirely happy. I mean, there's some good spots like Damian Williams, a nice third down back who can get open versus man coverage, and you have Anthony Ferguson who can block and get open. But it could have been better, and I think that they know that. But I can't complain considering all the moves that were going on during free agency.
So what is one better that you would see? Oh man, we missed out on making this kind of move. And so
well, there's moves that I would have liked them to make, but I understand to a degree why they couldn't make them. For example, I nearly said this every single time when I had the chance that when they get into free agency, that they should get Sebastian Joseph Day. They didn't get him. But then again, I understand that he went to the Chargers, which is the Brandon Staley connection. So I get why they couldn't have gotten him, even if they really wanted him. But there's still nose tackles right now that are not signed that are available and are quality at that, and we haven't signed them. So that's a question mark. I wanted Darius Williams if we could get a corner, at least for man coverage. And I had an idea that he wasn't going to be re-signed to the Rams because they didn't have enough money. So I was hoping for that. We didn't do that. So I understand why we weren't able to make moves, because whenever free agency happens, it's more about who coaching ties and stuff. But it sucks because we didn't necessarily fix a whole ton of things. We kind of just put a stop to like a partial bit of bleeding.
All right, so we got Ripcliff joining us tonight. How's it going?
What's going on, guys? What are we talking about right now?
I think you're still mute.
We're talking about free agency, and will you give their rating to how we did in free agency?
How we did in free agency? I mean, pretty good. I mean, aside from the obvious Ryan thing, but I can see where their head out was with that, which I don't think it was really their choice once they went for Deshaun. I think Matt kind of made that decision for them after that. But yeah, so overall though, I mean, getting Hayward, that was big. Re-signing Cordell Patterson, I think that was big. I mean, if you're going to get a quarterback to be a stopgap, Mariota's not a bad option. So all in all, it's not been that bad. Didn't we give Koo a contract this off season too? So
Yeah,
we sent him
$24 million.
Yeah,
about $5 million a year.
The only thing, I mean, I wish we would extend Grady, but I don't know what's going on with that. So
I think that's a thing for after the draft right there, kind of like what happened with Julio. It was either extending him or trading him. So expect basically it's probably like that second day of June. Expect to hear something about Grady, if not the first day, on him either being extended or traded. Something like it's.
I would
It's
hate
either
for them to trade him, dude. That would be, I mean, unless he's just blocking free agency, that's stupid.
I mean, I could.
The dumbest thing. He's in his prime.
Yeah.
And he's like our only defense. I mean, you got Terrell, but he's the only person on our defensive line that's, Well, we did.
Actually, worth talking about.
We did sign Lorenzo Carter. He's decent, but he's like a rotational pass rusher kind of guy.
And he's also on a 1-year deal.
Yeah. So
decent is a good way to put it because that's not really how I see him. I don't really think he's decent. I think he's meh.
Okay, is he an upgrade from Steven Means?
Not yeah. No, I say this because like Steven Means, despite I think what people think, actually was good with his hands. Like he used the same move, but was somehow able to get some type of pressure sometimes. Like he tagged Tristan Wirfs a few times. He tagged, I think he tagged Teron Armstead. And like whenever I look at Lorenzo Carter, all it is like a one-arm power stab move, and it's either works or it doesn't work. It's like he's long.
You just said that Steven Means only had one move.
He has a few other moves, but he mainly uses one move. But with Lorenzo Carter, it's mostly ineffective, and he's like quite raw.
No, I just want to tell you this. Lorenzo Carter had nearly as much sacks in his last 4 games last year than Steven Means had in his entire career.
That's pretty rough. I'm not saying Carter's like great or anything, but he's an upgrade over Means. He's a rotational guy that can get you, maybe 3 sacks a year or something like that. He ain't 3-4 sacks a year. He's not special or anything, but he can
to me.
He's a duct tape pass rusher at this point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just
Now,
about ish.
yeah, we definitely need to get, hopefully in the draft. I would hope we address edge, but
Yeah, I think it's more than likely we address edge.
Oh, Rip, because I don't
Yeah.
think other people have really heard about this. So, in Discord, you are very adamant about feeling a certain way towards George Karlaftis and then feeling a certain opposite way towards Jermaine Johnson.
Yeah.
Would you care to
Interesting.
explain to the people as to why you feel Karlaftis is a better pass rusher than Jermaine Johnson?
Oh, I
Because
fully agree.
yeah, because with Jermaine Johnson, and it's not anything against Jermaine Johnson. I still think he would be like a good second round pick, but he's not the first round hype that he's getting. Because he's not good with his hands. He doesn't win consistently
Exactly.
with his hands. He is more of he's an athlete, but he's not an edge rusher. George Karlaftis, and people talk about Karlaftis like he's not an athlete. Like if you go look at his combine numbers, they're not that bad for what he is. He's and when you watch him on tape, that dude is explosive. He whips people's ass, and he's got great hands. He's good against the run as well as he is against the pass. Now, he didn't get a lot of sack production at Purdue, but that's mainly because of the offenses he was going up against that were quick pass, get the ball out. Plus, he's the only person on that D line that was worth shit. So he got a lot of pressures, but he didn't get a lot of sacks. But pressures are just as good as sacks a lot of times because they cause turnovers, they cause interceptions, things like that. They affect the quarterback, which is your main goal. You want to throw off that quarterback's rhythm.
I don't really.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I fully agree with that. I think Karlaftis gets slept on a lot, and this also isn't a dig at Jermaine Johnson either, because I think that Jermaine Johnson has aspects about him that I like. He's fast, he's long, he understands when to figure out offensive lineman's strategy, and I do like that. But in terms of how people use their hands well, he has a wide array of moves. Jermaine Johnson has a wide array of moves and has a higher ceiling. However, in terms of just being more effective with their hands, like being able to have great hand placement, having maybe a little bit more power behind his punches, just because Karlaftis is stronger. Karlaftis just dominates. He's like, when you watch his tape, last year or whatever he did in the offseason was purely to become a pass rusher, a very good pass rusher, not really he took a lot of time to master that. And that's evident in his tape.
Let me put it this way. Whenever you turn on Jermaine Johnson's film, if you did not know what number he was, didn't know him, and you're just watching the film, you would be like, where's this Jermaine Johnson guy I'm hearing from? Because he might have one or two plays a game where he does something. But for the remainder of that game, he is non-existent almost. Every single – if you turn on a Purdue tape, you don't have to know who George Karlaftis is. You'll know pretty quickly who he is. You'll be like, oh, that number 5 guy, that must be the guy that they're talking about because he's whooping everybody's ass.
Oh, yeah. The announcer says it enough for you. You know where George you know it.
And so this is me. My ideal draft prospects are high floor guys with a little bit of ceiling, or hopefully a lot of ceiling. But I would take a high floor guy over a low floor, high ceiling guy. I like George Karlaftis. A lot of people say there's not a lot to grow with him. There isn't really because he's so polished. But there doesn't need to be growth for him because he's ready,
effective.
Right now. And so what I really look at is you look at the league And the people that are consistently top pass rushers are guys that have hand technique, and not just like they don't have just one move. They're able to like counter. They have some counter moves with them, and they know when to use those moves. They know when to do them. Jermaine has he basically whenever he has no plan. He doesn't rush with a plan. He's coming in. He's going to try to run down the middle of you, and then if that doesn't work, he's going to try to run around you. If that doesn't work, then he's just gonna flail his arms, and he might do like a spin or something, but it's not planned. It's not like when Karlaftis comes off the line, he knows exactly how he's going to attack you. He's going to explode. He's going to put hands in the chest, maybe try to pull some cloth. If you counter that, then he's going to do like an underhand rip move, something like that, and he can even spin inside if he needs to. But he knows if you do this, I'm going to do this, and he doesn't waste any time. It's just like if you do something to counter, and I'm going to do something to counter, and that's why he wins a lot more. And that's my thing with Kayvon Thibodeau. Like when I watch him, Kayvon Thibodeau, the reason I don't like his tape a lot is a lot of his sack production came off of him just exploding off the line and not getting blocked, and then he was just able to make a play with his speed. Oh shit! What the fuck?
He does have pretty good burst off the line. As a matter of fact, it rivals some of like the better pass rushers in the NFL with his jump off the ball. But that is true. I think he has decent tape because he also has shown good hand usage as well. But I think he's raw, which is why you have Hutch first and you don't think about it. But yeah, I think he's massively slept on, and the edge rushing position is just like a nice way to think about how we should approach the draft in general. Like as Cliff said, you really want to go for high floor players because we aren't exactly in a full on rebuild, even though we're retooling. We're looking for guys that can impact the game right out the gate and also grow because Karlaftis can still grow, and we're just looking for other players that can come in and like provide off the jump,
To be honest, I don't really think Jermaine Johnson or Karlaftis are better than each other, and the reason I say that is both of these guys have had games where you're like, where either one of them at? In the Discord, I think Noah had put in the game. I forgot what game it was. I think it was like a week 5 or 6 game. But Karlaftis was just getting torn up, and it was abysmal. It was like he wasn't trying. The effort wasn't there. You didn't see the explosion you usually see. It was like he just blanked out.
That was an Ohio State game.
Yeah, that too. But then it was a Jermaine Johnson game, I think, against what was that? I think it was against Florida, and if not Florida, I think it was against South Carolina. Against Akeem Quantum when they went against each other. He was there. Akeem Quantum had him on silent mode that entire game. I think he made one play in the run game, and that was kind of because the running back he chose the wrong hole, and Jermaine Johnson just popped up right there and just made the play. But other than that, Akeem Quantum had him basically on wraps. But you also have these games where both of these guys just explode out and they're making plays, and they're making plays in the run game, they're making plays in the pass game, but they're also making plays by staying on the field for long. And I think when that comes into it, you always have those defensive linemen that can stay on the field for long and that needs those breaks like Jordan Davis and Aaron Donald and guys like that. I think the thing that gives Jermaine Johnson a little edge on Karlaftis is that he plays 95. I think it was 90 either 90 or 95% of the snaps per game in every play. I mean, every game that he plays. So that right there kind of tells you he can stay on the field and he can help out. But I think what both of these guys is, I don't even think Karlaftis is a high floor, low ceiling. I think he's a high ceiling guy, high floor. I think both of these guys are. Because I think if you draft either one of them, they're going to contribute on day one. They may not be, the best edge rusher in the class because, you still have guys like Thibodeau and Hutchinson and Trayvon Walker. But, they're both guys that if you take them at 8, you wouldn't be upset because, they're going to provide from day one. And they might be the next edge rushers that you have for the next 5 to 10 years.
Now, you mentioned Trayvon Walker. Like, he's also another kind of controversial one where you don't fully know where he's going to land.
Because he can go from I think the thing with Trayvon Walker is people don't know what he can do because that Georgia defensive line was so stacked. Like, next year's Georgia defensive line, it's going to be like this year again where you're going to have at least 3-4 first-round picks on that defense, like in the front 7. And when it's kind of like that, you're like, okay, well, is he going to be the Trayvon Walker that we saw against Alabama in the national championship game and the Clemson game and what else was that? What was that game? The Georgia Tech game. Or are we going to have the Trayvon Walker that was in the Clemson game where he made that one play but went quiet for a little bit, or the SEC championship game? And I think that's where people are trying to figure out because you could say he can go over Hutchinson at 1 because of he has a higher maybe the highest ceiling in the class out of all edge rushers, or you could say he drops all the way probably to 10 because he's probably the most raw prospect at least in the top 5 of edge rushers that you have in this entire class. I don't think he escapes the top 10, but I don't think he's a lock to go in the top 5, and I don't think he's a lock to go get past 1, if you know what I'm trying to say.
Okay, let's take a look at some of these other questions that we've seen up here. Someone from Champagne Bath said that the Falcons make better offensive moves or defensive moves in the offseason.
Defense. I mean, the offensive moves are okay, but the thing is, you re-signed Cordell Patterson. Of course, that was the main thing you wanted to do. But you traded Matt Ryan, which doesn't really help you out. I mean, it wasn't really, like Rip said earlier, it wasn't really their choice after the Deshaun Watson debacle. He was probably already on his way out before, the Deshaun Watson thing got out.
Yeah, there was like an interview that he had like DJ Shockley. He was like, yeah, it's already kind of time for me to move on to something else. And then the Falcons kind of felt mutual in the regards of maybe we should start looking at our future, which, I mean, where they started to go with that direction was really wild. And then it got more and more tame until we ended up with Marcus Mariota, which was another one that, we were expecting to kind of get, like, even if we were to have Matt Ryan, like that was something that Arthur Smith kind of wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I don't mind him. I like what Mariota can provide you as far as stability when he's on the field.
That's a concern.
That's about it. So for health reasons alone, you would kind of look at what can another quarterback do to offer to maintain some stability, or you would just not have to worry about that. Maybe put Felipe Franks in at QB2 and kind of go from there and ride along your season that way, which I wouldn't be too mad against it unless if I know that there was like a better option to be had.
Yeah.
And then as far as the defense is concerned, I feel like there's more pieces, like depending on who you want to put on your starting 11. All right, for me, I want to try to have like I want like 5 secondary guys, right? And then focus on like maybe 2 or 3 linebackers, and then the rest are the defensive linemen. because I want my best players on the field as much as possible, right? So either have like a 3 safety system where you have your 2 safety with the nickel cornerback being Isaiah Oliver, and then you have your rotation of either Deion Jones and Rashaan Evans, and then if one of them, get tired out or switch over to a new role, then you have Michael Walker as your backup. And I can't, I'm not going to forget about the impact that Dorian Etheridge might be able to have. He was another sneaky pick that we picked up. So you could still go for some extra depth at linebacker there, but I'm not too mad at what you're at. And then edge rushers, yeah, it's obviously a need. Defensive linemen in the interior, also another major need. But outside of that, you got competition everywhere else that looks really good. The offensive line, going back on the offensive side of the ball, I like it because I don't have like solid answers as to like who's like, is Jalen Mayfield going to continue to be left guard? Is Caleb McGarry going to continue to be the right tackle? Is, Matt Hennessy or Drew Dalman going to continue to share snaps or whatever at center? I don't know how good of a problem it is, but I'm just going to leave those positions open for whoever makes the better, whoever gives us a better production there. As far as your running backs are concerned, Cordell Patterson, he's good. We already know who he is, but he's over 30. Damian Williams, the Super Bowl running back, he's solid, but he's over 30. Mike Davis, over 30. Quadri Allison, still unproven as far as, when the more you give him, the more unpredictable he may be. So in a lesser role, I like him, but that's all he's ever really been. So I want something there a little bit more than maybe just like a Caleb Huntley. Wide receivers, tight ends. Outside of Kyle Pitts, you got Anthony Ferkser, and yeah. So I feel like there's more questions on the offensive side of the ball, but as far as what is available for us to take in the draft, I still like our chances of just strengthening up our strength, if you can call defense a strength nowadays, and get a guy there to bolster up the spot, and then you'll have your other 8 picks or so, however many Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot feel comfortable with having, and just kind of fill in those other spots. Maybe get your other tight end, because I like Ferkser as a tight end too, but I want more upside to be had there in the future, right? I like our running backs, but I don't love them yet as a group, so I'm waiting for more stability there for our future. Wide receivers, obviously we're talking about wide receiver ground one for a reason, but that's also another position with a lot of depth to be selected from. So I'm not going to be so worried about that. Whereas I take a look at some of our other positions, offensive line, defensive line, edge rusher, pickings are a little bit more slim there.
Sorry, guys, I was having some technical issues. I'm still trying to figure out how to get this to come through my headset instead of my.
I've had that same problem.
It's like connected.
Me to do everything here.
It's connected, but the audio settings, all it gives me is default headset earpiece, which I would think that'd come through my headset. But when I did,
I think that's a StreamYard problem now. I don't think that's necessarily a headset issue or the app isn't working. I think it's strictly just this web. This site that we're using.
It's interesting. Yeah. Oh, I'll just make do. My phone died on me. That's what happened. So I had to kind of change up my setup, but to get a charger. I didn't know it was draining my battery. I had the charger hooked up to it, but it was a slow charger, not a fast charger. And it was with the StreamYard up and everything, it was draining the battery. So
yeah. Moving on to a question from Ramiro Ledesma. I hope I'm saying that right. I've never seen you before, so hey, glad to have you joining us. If you're still around, it's 11 minutes ago. He's saying individually, God, we're as a group, who would y'all want to take to draft the first 2 rounds? So we got 3 picks to choose from. Who wants to start off?
okay.
So at 8 is kind of tricky because, what this draft offers you is kind of what a lot of needs that we have, which is edge rusher, interior defensive lineman, O-line, maybe at right tackle. I saw a mock draft earlier that had us taking Evan Neal. I don't, I've never seen, like, that was my first time
Yeah, I
ever
think that was
seeing that.
Peter Schrager.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've never ever wanted that to happen. I don't know why you would take Evan Neal. He's purely a left tackle, but that's another conversation for next week. But yeah, like I said, like tackle, maybe linebacker. If if you don't think Rashaan Evans and Deion Jones and Michael Walker are enough, wide receiver, and of course, if you want to have a quarterback prepared for next year, of course, you have Malik Willis or Matt Corral or maybe even Desmond Riddler. Hope they don't reach that hard though. But yeah, but I think first, between three players for me at 8 would probably be Garrett Wilson, Jermaine Johnson, and Jordan Davis. And how free agency has looked this year, how the offense and defensive class looks this year. I know y'all are gonna hate this pick, but I'd have to say Garrett Wilson at 8 just because if you want to give Marcus Mariota a fair shot at least being competent this year, you cannot give him Alden Tate and Olamide Zaccheaus as his first 2 wide receivers.
And Kadero Hodge.
And Kadero Hodge. You cannot if you really want that man to succeed,
Exactly.
you can't do that. You cannot do that to Marcus Mariota. Okay. That's just that's not even disrespectful anymore. That's just cold-blooded and black-hearted at that point.
Exactly.
I get what you're saying with that, but he's made the playoffs with Rashard Matthews, Tajay Sharp, and like Corey Davis as his 3 biggest targets. He's tried to make Dorial Green Beckham work. He's tried to make Bishop Sankey work. He's tried to make
granted, those guys are better than what we have currently on the roster.
That is true. I mean, you have OZ who's like 5, maybe not even 5'11", probably like 5'9", and runs
5'8", actually.
5'8", runs probably lower than a 4.5. And while he's a good route runner, it doesn't really matter because he's slow.
He's a better wide receiver 4. He's like a wide receiver.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's how I feel. And I love OZ. I really do.
Yeah.
Like I love him with like my heart because he blocks and he works with what he physically has. But I don't think it's enough to it's just not enough. It's not even really enough to be a slot receiver. But you're definitely pushing it, trying to make him your number 2. Like you can't do that at all.
Yeah,
okay. Think about this one because there's a wide receiver we keep forgetting about. What if we force Frank Darby to work?
That's what I was thinking. I thought about that a little bit. Like, I like Frank Darby, but I think he kind of should compete with OZ as wide receiver 4. I don't know how much I like him. Yeah, I don't know how much I like him in the slot, and I don't know how much I like him as wide receiver 2. I'd rather like use him similar to how we use Laquan Treadwell a little bit, but just with him also being able to stretch the field vertically. But I think like using him across the middle, play action, and stuff
Elite.
like that.
Demir Bird. He's another one.
And Demir
Bird. Yeah, I like Demir Bird.
I think that's our slot guy.
I think he's a slot / pseudo Z who kind of also is a backup. Like, for example, I think he comes in handy in those bunch formations where he's not exactly getting pressed the whole time and he can just use his speed to get open. And he's not necessarily like trying to get off the line and deal with physicality. And that's why I like him. But like we have majority, for the most part, slow receivers that are short and can get open, but it doesn't really matter because they're slow and short and don't have the best ball skills. And like Cordero Hodge is like the only outlier who isn't like short-ish. I mean, he's short, but he also has good ball skills.
Like 6'5", 230.
Auden Tate
is good, but I like Auden Tate, but it's it's kind of hard for me to say much about Auden Tate just because like I haven't really seen him against like as much like that's actually false. I haven't seen a bigger sample size, and I don't think he's seen everything of press coverage, even though I think he's good. Like I think he's good enough to where in zone coverage he can just catch it and then over a shorter receiver, and that just is what you can go to. Like he's practically a living zone beater, but in man coverage is where I worry. Like I don't really trust him that much trying to defeat man coverage on a consistent basis, especially having him as our X receiver, which with his build, he would be our X receiver. So like I'd want like next to that, I'd want a guy like Sky Moore or John Mechie who can just simply get open. Like they can get open reliably. You don't have to worry about it. They'll get open, and Marcus Mariota will hit them like a safety valve in those third downs. So
Okay, you mentioned Sky Moore. He's probably like a late first round pick, maybe early second. We're probably not going to get him. Mechie is kind of weird to figure out where he could go.
Bro, Mechie's not going to be available till like October, November. Because
oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
He
got
does
that
have
problem
injury.
as well.
he tore his ACL, but he's not like Jamison to where he had that very strong, speedy legs. I mean, he's fast, but he's not, Jamison
He's not
wasn't
that
fast.
fast.
So his ACL recovery isn't going as
But I've
fast.
been
Yeah.
saying, hey, for a while now, Kyle Phillips is right there.
Yeah,
Kyle
that's
Phillips I like too, but
Yeah, I
he's
like him
more
at the
like
Senior Bowl.
exclusively a slot receiver.
I think it was the
That's
Senior
I
Bowl
mean-
he was at, or was it the East West? Yeah, it was in one of those
yeah, he's
showcase
in the
Yeah.
Shrine game.
He killed it. He killed it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
He's good, but like I feel bad taking him because then I'd be like, then that would kind of just signify that Ozzy's out the door. Like I'm not re-signing Ozzy if I get Kyle Phillips, and I don't really know if I want to do that right now. Even though I feel like that is what you should do, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I like Ozzy. I don't want to do it. So I think what I would probably do is I've moved on with the fact that of Drake London, even though I really like Drake London. I feel like he has Mike Evans potential and that he can get there, but not like out the gate. I think Garrett Wilson's probably your best bet if you want to go wide receiver, but I don't know. I want a guy next to Auden Tate who can just get open and help Kyle Pitts and Auden Tate. That way, if they're getting doubled, you just have a guy who can get open, kind of like
I'm
Russell
sorry.
Gage.
all right.
All right,
Well,
let's kind of wrap this up because Trey. All right, so he selected Garrett Wilson. Alex, who was your round one pick then? Let's kind of wrap this question up.
You know what? I'm gonna probably just trade down and get Tyler Linderbaum, and then the next round, if Sky Moore is available, I'd take him there, and then with the next pick, I'd go Nick Benito.
Okay. Rip.
all right. And so with me, it really just depends on who's on the board at 8. But my theory is that we're probably either going to go offensive line or edge. So I would go Karlaftis, or I mean, if I would go Neal because he did play right tackle in college before he went and moved to left tackle. Plus, a lot of people don't understand this, but Jake Matthews also played right tackle in college. So either one of those guys can move into that right tackle spot, whichever way you want to do it. And they could do vice versa. So if he's there, that's an option. I really like Karlaftis, but I also think that there's a very good chance that we trade back up into the bottom of the first. Not with any future picks, with the extra picks that we have from the Julio trade and from the Matt Ryan trade, into the bottom of the first to either get. I think we're going to address the offensive and defensive lines more than I do receiver. Receiver, I think, will go in the second round. With that. So if we traded back up, I would say something like a Kenyon Green, something like that. trying to think of like an edge guy. If Karlaftis was to fall, if we say we went offensive line first and Karlaftis fell down the board, maybe. Trying
Maybe
to think.
That's like also like Boye Mafe territory.
I don't know if he's worth the first. I don't think you'd be trading back up into the first for him. Because see, that's the thing with the edge is like you got the guys up at the very top, and then there's like a big gap. They're still good, but there's a big drop off.
Yeah, it's
After
pretty
those top
noticeable.
guys. Yeah, so you may go edge first, and then because like the offensive line, like especially interior, like they're like that the middle of the first, early second. There's really good value there.
Oh yeah.
So with a
final answer.
Linderbaum, Kenyon Green, something like that.
All right, so final answer.
So final answer, I would probably take Karlaftis at 8 if it was me picking, and then trade back up into the first and get a Kenyon Green or maybe even a Linderbaum, something like that. And then in the second, I would go wide receiver. It's kind of hard to pick on who you would pick there because you don't know who would be available, but that'd probably be my target, would be wide receiver.
Right. I think just for the sake of differences, I'm going to represent the crowd that wants Jordan Davis at 8, or at least in the first round. And then from there, if I want to try to get a Davis, we've already talked about the wide receiver, obviously, but then our edge group, which we've already also tried to discuss, I would see who is there as far as like maybe Arnold Ebiketie from Penn State. Maybe you got yourself here's a name I haven't heard in a while, but Drake Jackson from USC.
Yeah, he's meh.
Raw.
Yeah, like when I watch his tape, I'm just like bored as hell. So.
Oh my gosh! When I watched his tape, I turned it off. I really did. I was like, nah, I can't do it.
Asleep.
I was like, I don't have the patience for this. This is too much.
Let me try this one then. Cameron Thomas from San Diego State.
Oh, I love him.
He's good.
If you can get him in the second, yeah. Okay.
Him, Logan Hall, that works too.
Even like late first, if
Yeah, and then from there, since we have the second pick in the second round, then I would try to focus on what the O-line looks like. I don't know if late 2 is too high for a guy like maybe Dylan Parham.
Yeah, I hadn't watched much of him, so I don't have.
He's okay, but for me personally, where I'm at is I wouldn't take another offensive lineman, at least at center, unless like they're worth it. Like I do
is a very good option, but you don't want to take him. You don't want to take him in the second because he's got like off the field issues. Like
I've been hearing
he would be like a second round pick if he didn't like had the like could be a Kelvin Joseph or something.
Oh jeez.
Yeah.
And then let's say those don't work out. I'm not going to say that he doesn't make it here, but Nick Benito, we've already kind of mentioned him in the previous show with the heavy hitters.
He's literally a lightning ball. Literally a lightning ball.
Yeah, I mean he's going to be like a situational pass rusher. Like that's the value you're going to get.
Like a rover. Yeah, he's more like a rover. He reminds me a little bit of. I don't want to say it because now people are going to start like thinking I'm crazy, but like he reminds me of Micah Parsons when I'm looking at it on film, or at least like how he's utilized, not how his skill set is, but he reminds me of how he's utilized.
Yeah,
we also have Billy Milestone and Alec Pierce in the late second.
I like Alec Pierce.
Yeah, he's all right.
I don't love him, but I like him.
Speaking of which, I don't think this question was answered.
Eric Ekuzama or something like that.
Eric,
or is that Trey Turner?
No,
I think that might be Trey Turner. It's one of those two players. I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at what else we've been asked. Oh, this was definitely a question for me. So you're 90% sure Mariota will stay healthy and trust Franks as QB2. Look, when it comes to our quarterbacks, we got to understand that we're not telling them to be Matt Ryan. We're not telling them to throw the ball like 30 to 40 times a game. We understand the role that they provide, and they are now to complement the run game.
Yeah.
All right, so that's why we're focused more on like play action, more focus for kind of more long developing routes, which is why you either want a guy with the ability to get separation either early and often, or just provide a bigger catch radius for Mariota.
Or
That way he can just take those shot plays, or the steep crossers, or the deep post and the deep out, and anything you want to do from there. Because I think that he still has that, and he can still make those throws. So I'm not going to put it past him to give me that. And then, we know about his mobility. We know that he's willing to run, but he also knows that he's not going to be the first person, or he's not going to look to run first if his first read isn't there, which I have a few concerns with other people about that. So I like that he's still willing to, go through his progressions, make sure that he can get his feet set, and when it comes to making the throw, and determine his decision right then and there, get the ball out quick, and kind of live to fight the other down. So, and if that doesn't work, if he still gets hurt from doing whatever, he takes a sack and breaks a collarbone or whatever, I'm knocking on something. I don't have any wood right now, but
I got you.
But hey, Franks is there. From a skill set perspective, you don't really lose all that much, but at that point, it's just going to be a knowledge and the chemistry that you're lacking there, which anyone that you bring in at this point now, they're still going to suffer from the same problem to an extent, because they're not going to be as acclimated to the playbook and the system as Mariota would be. So you'd have to beat them out physically and mentally in that battle, which, how many quarterbacks do you see in this draft class that you would say that for? Maybe take a flyer just for the depth purposes, but even then, that's not the biggest need when we're already trying to build the roster from however we want to go about it, which for us was, likely the trenches first.
There's way too many holes on this team to take a flyer on a quarterback just to need a QB2. Yeah, like a QB2. No. What you just brought up is the real reason that I think that trenches are going to be a very big emphasis in the draft this year for us, even over wide receiver, because I think that Arthur Smith is going to want a strong run game and a good solid defense, and the only way that we can get a solid defense fielded is to get some edge rush in Atlanta, and we need to protect Mariota, and we need to have maulers that can move the ball. So I could definitely see, say, people are putting Akeem Ekwonu at the top 5 right now, but let's just say he's there at 8. I really would pull the trigger on him, because that guy, you put him at right tackle, you put him at guard, either one, he's just going to be a people mover right out the gate. And he's going to, what style we're going to play next year would play right into his hands. And then you could develop, the rest of his game.
Oh, yeah. So that man, Ekwonu, he's like Tevin Jenkins, but on steroids. On more steroids.
Yeah, he just doesn't have Akeem doesn't have the best technique in the world, but he just makes people explode when he touches them. So
literally, yeah. And I agree. I think at least for my rationale, I like Matt Hennessy, but he just has some things about him that, he'll miss some second level blocks that he should take certain angles on, and it's obvious that Matt Hennessy has to get into the weight room, and it's and his pass protection is hit or miss because he'll miss stunts, and it's. I mean, I'm sure you could work with him because this was like more of his rookie season, but
Yeah,
no,
I
I
would
like
love
Tyler Linderbaum.
Yeah, I would love Linderbaum. I just, I don't like. It would be crazy, like, because I would hate it to a point where we didn't get edge. But say we say for some reason Akeem is there at 8, right? We take him. Linderbaum is there, like bottom of the first. You trade back up and you get him. Like your offensive line is set.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to You don't have to worry about it anymore.
That's true. Yeah.
And if you're still worried about the right tackle, maybe give Jalen Mayfield that chance again. Because in the run game,
Well, see, I think Jalen Mayfield in that scenario, Jalen Mayfield stays at left guard.
Yeah, I agree.
Either
I
that
think
or this year we keep McGarry and keep him at right tackle, move Akeem to left guard for this year, and Jalen Mayfield's on the bench. And then next year you move Akeem to right tackle and Mayfield at left guard again, or you have somebody else, come in. But
this might fall into the next question for the future is to like, okay, we understand that we need to pick up the 5th-year option for Chris Lindstrom, but how much do we feel about McGarry if Mayfield shows promise, or maybe like Jermaine Ifedi if he shows promise? Because he's also
we're not.
I can tell you this right now. After watching Jermaine Ifedi, I think Jermaine Ifedi probably should start. If not, they should at least split snaps because ain't no way you can definitively say that Caleb McGarry is better than Jermaine Ifedi. I've seen this guy go up against quite a few good pass rushers similar to that of the schedule that Caleb McGarry has faced, and he's done pretty decent at that. So I think that at least from how our O-line is going to look, I think you have Jake Matthews who stays just at his position, no workaround. Chris Lindstrom stays at his position, no workaround. You have Jermaine Ifedi and Caleb McGarry splitting snaps, and they'll eventually find a starter. Matt Hennessy mixed with a little bit of Drew Dahlman, but I think Matt Hennessy is going to get PT, even though I'd rather have Tyler Linderbaum just sure up that for protection and the running game because we did average 3.7 yards per carry the entire season, which is bad in the run. You have and then at left guard is where things get interesting. No one has mentioned this signing because I don't think a lot of people know too much about this player. But Colby Gissett actually did really good in our last game of the season versus the Saints, at least in pass protection wise. In the run game, you can make all like the things that you want about him because he's not what I would say great, or at least not as proficient as Jalen Mayfield is. So I'm thinking during the regular season, you have Gissett and Jalen Mayfield split snaps, which is why I think that they re-signed him in the first place. So they can have that rotation there happen. So you have Colby Gissett who comes in on some drives for pass protection purposes, and then you have Jalen Mayfield who's still developing his pass protection, but is also a menace in the run game. So I think that's what they're going to do.
I kind of want to take the question that I see here posted here about Trayvon Walker. Here's the thing about Trayvon Walker. Trayvon Walker is about to get overdrafted by somebody.
I agree.
Trayvon Walker has all the athletic measurables, but you turn on his tape and that dude is raw can get. And my thing is with the draft, okay, a lot of people see these athletes and they think, oh, I can just get this guy and mold him and that he'll be a baller, right? But how often does that actually happen?
You better have Chuck Smith there. You know what I'm saying?
Really think about the guys that were the super athletes that everyone was like, oh, you just get that guy and teach him some things and he's good. That doesn't happen a lot, right? Like you even take like Clowney, right? Jadeveon Clowney, right? Jadeveon Clowney was a beast in college. Like a menace to society in college, right? He comes to the league, and he's not much more than like a run. Like, he's really good against the run. He can give you some pass rush, but he's not elite. Like, it is hard to play edge in the NFL, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the edges that come in and are successful are the ones that have a tool belt when they come in. And I'm not talking about a tool belt of like athleticism. Athleticism, you need baseline athleticism. But, I mean, you wouldn't say that TJ Watt is the craziest athlete in the league, right? But he's the best edge rusher in the league. His brother before him was, I mean, they're good athletes. They're great athletes and by normal standards, but I'm talking about like league standards, right? They're not the craziest athletes in the world. The Bosa brothers, like you look at Max Crosby, the list goes on and on of like guys that if you just looked at them, you'd say, that they're not the best athlete, the greatest athletes is what we could get, but you can just go down the list. There's guys every year that just tear up the combine and everyone falls in love with them. And they're like, oh, we just get that guy and coach him up and he's going to be great. And then he's out of the league in 5 years.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think Walker is okay. Like, I don't.
Oh, I take
like,
Walker
I
in a
don't.
heartbeat in the second.
Yeah. I it's not like I'm not against Walker. It's just like I have a high value on guys that are very polished, especially with just me with football, my connection with football. I like to place a lot of emphasis on people that learn the fundamentals of football because that lets me know that they're gonna go out and just get pressure and get production immediately.
And plus,
And
that they can take coaching and they can build on it because they already have. These
right,
guys
exactly.
that don't have anything when they're coming in, I'm thinking you were in a major college program. You probably were at like a major high school, most of these guys. And you don't have these tools. Why?
Right, right. And I think he has all the potential, like 4 or 5.
The potential is
Has
nothing if it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
No, you're right. You're right. And that's what's kind of rough. Like you like players like this. They are like one of the guys that like get hyped up and you're waiting for it and you're probably like that's probably going to be the next big thing no one knows about. Which yeah, maybe, but it really does take time for people to become good at the art of pass rushing or being a corner or being a offensive lineman. Now there are the anomalies such as like Tristan Wirfs who wasn't the greatest in his technique when he was in college, but just came out and dominated. And like you have your anomalies, but most of those guys were like the top off-season draft workout guys, which I don't know all the guys, but there are a few. And he worked with like one of those guys that are really good at getting production out of players when they are in the draft process to help them fit better in the NFL. And we don't have that information. We just simply don't have that information around Trevon Walker. And so, quite frankly, it's more like a decision that I would leave up to the Falcons, even though I personally wouldn't go do it off of what I have. So.
yeah. My thing. Okay, so my biggest thing with the whole potential thing is the only guy that I've seen that like if you were I'm not talking about edge, I'm just talking about prospects, right? In the past few years that like their tape gave you some questions and they ended up becoming great was Josh Allen. He's the only guy that I've seen that like whenever he was coming out, you're like looking at his tape and his production and stuff, you're like, and he ended up getting developed but he always had the tools, right? You always saw like the arm and he'd make like some throws in the game and you're like, damn, that's a hell of a throw, but he just made basically his biggest issue was he was at Wyoming. He didn't really get a lot of good coaching, and he made some plays that he shouldn't because he trusted his arm too much. And then he got in the league, and now he's is who he is. He at first, his first couple of years, he was like so. It was a bit rocky, but then he kicked it on the past couple of years, and he's been great. But that's the only guy I could really say that like I didn't see it in college. And I mean, I wouldn't say that I didn't see it with Josh Allen. I just didn't think that he would ever reach that potential that he had.
I mean, I'd throw another one out there in Justin Herbert.
Oh yeah, Justin Herbert's a not necessarily because of him being
showed
raw.
it his freshman year. His freshman, if you go back to his freshman tape, Herbert was who he was.
He was good. It's more so the coaching staff.
Yeah, they changed coaching staffs or something, and he just did not take well to it.
A lot of people assume that he couldn't do stuff simply because like they didn't show him doing it, but he could. So it was more so like the coaching staff was more so.
Yeah,
I don't want to say incompetent, but like borderline, and it kind of screwed him over. So
yeah.
Let's get on to this one because we were talking about offensive linemen. We had this to say about like, oh, hey, offensive line would be set with that idea, but then we'll still allow 2,200 rushing yards this year. Not only that, are you guys okay with investing so much draft capital in the offensive line? Trey, do you have anything you want to say about this?
I mean, not really. I mean, it's kind of just it's like because it's kind of like a question I'm kind of stuck on. Because it's like you want to have you don't want to invest too much draft capital into the offensive line because you still have other needs to put into the team, but you also have to make sure that the offensive line is pretty much the second most important part of your team.
Yeah. Well, here's my thing: we're not drafting for just next year.
Right.
So, if you really want to fix the offensive line, that's what you do. I mean, yeah, I would love to get an edge rusher or one line offensive lineman, but it really just depends on how the draft shakes out, right? Because like at 8, I would really like a Karlaftis or something like that. But like if Akeem Ekwonu's right there, I mean, you got to take him.
Right, exactly. It's like BPA at that point.
Like you cannot pass on that guy. And then like you get later on in the draft, well, what if Karlaftis is gone and then like the best edge rusher there is, or like you get in the second round, so you don't trade up, but or you see like offensive linemen coming off and edge rushers, and you trade up and the best guy there is another offensive lineman. I'm not gonna like take the 4th or 5th best edge rusher over like my 2nd or 3rd offensive lineman,
Right. And
whatever the case may be, you gotta have a plan for him. One thing I want to say though first about this first part of this is like, yeah, we'll have our offensive line, but we'll still allow a bunch of rushing yards. Okay, well, think about it this way: if you let your offense stay on the field a lot longer, and if your offensive system works to the point where you are you're taking time off the clock and you're also trying to put points on the board consistently, those rushing yards are naturally going to disappear just based off of the game situation. We actually talked about this before we started the stream.
You're shortening the game. You're protecting your defense because they don't have to. And plus, they're going to be throwing it a lot if you score on those drives. If you have like long drives where you score, they're going to be throwing a lot, which, you need edge rush for sure. And it doesn't
we also
mean
have our secondary to help us out with that as well.
Yeah, maybe your secondary is like if you got, say, with the team like that just controls clock and gives limited opportunities to that defense, say that quarterback is forcing things and he forces a turnover. That's huge in that game. Just one turnover because then we're just going to bleed out clock, maybe put another score up. And then, then your defense is, you can protect your defense with a strong offense like that. Like not because we wouldn't be like the issue with the Falcons previously with bad defenses is our offenses weren't run heavy. We were explosive offenses where we could put up points fast on people, but we didn't have ball control a lot of times.
We really didn't. Third down was.
Yeah. So your defense was hanging out to dry. And that was a problem with the previous regime not putting resources in the offensive line, because there's no reason that we couldn't have had a ball control, balanced offense, but they just didn't invest the resources to it.
Yeah, and I'd argue that like for like these 2,200 yards, I think that you could just say like, well, first of all, I just say just take a look at what the free agency market for defensive tackles, and like then that's kind of that's kind of really my rebuttal, because you look at the market for defensive tackles. There's defensive tackles that we could take that would kind of that would very much improve our run defense. For why we haven't done it, I don't know. Like that's beyond me. But it's not to say that
salary cap at the moment.
No,
probably
the money and the contracts for the upcoming rookies.
Then again,
it probably is. Yeah.
The thing is, the reason they didn't go all out again this year is because one, you have more picks this year, and not just more picks, you have more higher picks. Like if you have like maybe you have like like three, like first or second and a third, and then a couple extra maybe fifths and sixths. You have 2 seconds, 2 fourths, 2 thirds, and a first, and that first is a top 10 pick. So you can't, like, all of these guys are going to cost money, and at least all of that right there is at least like 35 to 40 million. So you can't just go stupid with the bag this year because you have not just more picks, but more higher picks than you did last year.
Right. And on top of that, last year we had a chance to take a defensive tackle and we didn't. So I'm already thinking that that Dean Pease is kind of under the assumption like, nah, we don't really need to take defensive tackle in this draft or provide draft capital for that anyway, because we have like
thinking about it, we do need a nose tackle. We do need a nose tackle, right? But our defensive interior isn't as bad as people think it is. Like, people will just write off Marlon Davidson like he's nothing. I'm not saying he's like fantastic or nothing, but he's a solid player for you. And then you got you got Cooper Rush, is his name? Or
Anthony Rush?
Anthony Rush, yeah. Sorry.
Cooper Rush was like a former Dallas Cowboys quarterback.
Yeah. So, Anthony Rush. Yeah, you got him. Like you got guys that can, obviously got
Graham as well.
Taquan Graham. Yeah, he didn't even really play last year, very much.
When he did, he was good against the run. Yeah.
So I mean, and you even got like guys like Kaminsky who are like edge guys, but like could play interior,
like
even
tweeners.
Like tweener guys. So I mean, you're not like. I'm not saying you're like great at a defensive interior, but it's also, unless you get, one of the top guys at nose, there's really not, and we don't really need 3 techs. So,
yeah, we don't at all.
Put it
As a matter
this
of fact,
way,
if we get one more 3 tech, I'm gonna get pissed off.
Yeah, put it this way: like the quote of the offseason for the Falcons, it's never as bad as you think, but it's also never as good as you think either.
Yeah,
exactly. That's like a premium quote right now.
Here's the thing: we got so many holes, and people are like, "Well, if you got these many holes, you can just spread it out." Like, that's not necessarily how you have to attack things. Basically, you're in a good position where you can pretty much take a player at the value that they're at the pick, and he's going to help your team because you have so many holes to fill, and we're not going to fill all the holes in one off season. So just get that out of your mind.
Yeah, we really aren't. And I think that there's like gonna be something that we're gonna do in free agency. I really do. And if not, there's always next year. And I think it's more suitable.
Next year's gonna be crazy because we're gonna be able to sign a ton of guys.
Exactly. We have more cap space. We can go out and sign more defensive tackles. Like this year, we didn't really have much money, nor did we even have more connections to get guys that can help off. So next year we do, and we'll have money and connection.
Well, I'm looking at in this draft. I'm looking at where the positions of value are, and where we're drafting, because wherever we draft, we're going to be able to find a guy that we could bring in and is going to immediately help this team. So, like, it's just about how the draft's going to follow. Nobody knows how that's going to be until the night comes, right?
Yeah.
So, and if you look at Terry Fontenot, where he comes from and his track record, there's a very good possibility we do get a first round offensive line. I keep saying that, but New Orleans did it
Right.
all the time. They had a strong offensive line, and they were still taking offensive linemen in the first round.
Yeah,
Exactly.
they were taking Teron Armstead. They were taking Ryan Ramczyk. They were taking
Eric
Cesar
McRae.
Yeah, like they took them all the time.
Right, and I know that it seems like we've had a lot of draft capital invested in our offensive line, but
That's just recently, though.
it's not as much as you think. Like Jake Matthews that was draft capital, but it was like a long time ago. Chris Lindstrom was a first round pick, not too recently, but recently. Caleb McGarry was I don't want to talk about Caleb McGarry badly because I don't think he's bad, but he just wasn't supposed to be taken in first.
Before those picks that you just mentioned, it wasn't it would have been since 2008 since we took a first round draft pick, offensive line.
Exactly.
So you're talking about gaps that are crazy. Like, Lindstrom was taken and McGarry, but we drafted Matthews, but that was a 5-year gap between those picks. So if you want to fix a position group, you have to throw resources at it. If you look at look at the Cowboys when they had that offensive line that they had built, that's because they threw capital at it every draft for 3 years.
Exactly. And I think one of the interesting points is first, Caleb McGarry wasn't supposed to be drafted in the first round. We all know this. And I like Caleb McGarry, but he just wasn't. So that automatically that just takes one draft pick or one draft pick kind of off the table. You really only invested
you only hit on two
first rounders.
Yeah,
right?
you only hit on two of them. So that doesn't make it on the line.
You have 2 third rounders and Jalen Mayfield and Matt Hennessy, who had his first rookie season this year, and I think you need a replacement for Alex Mack, and it's quite clear that Matt Hennessy isn't going to fulfill those shoes. So why not just take one more first rounder who is going to hit, because people are comparing him to Jason Kelsey. So I'm just saying he's going to hit.
You never know he's going to hit, but here's the thing. So when you're building up a position group, right? You throw resources at it continuously. Offensive line is so important. I would take an offensive lineman in the first 3 rounds every year. Seriously.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Every single year. Unless it was just a really weak offensive line class. But this is a really strong, in the middle, they have, you have the guys at the top, and then there's a big drop off, and then most of it's interior guys. But there's guys though. And really with offensive line, if you're taking past the first 2 rounds, you're probably not getting a great value with it. Third round is more your depth guys, and then beyond that, you're just really just shooting into a barrel, because the top offensive line is so important that it goes quick. If there's value guys there, they go high. So you just have to, with edge, the reason our edge hasn't been ever fixed is because we really don't throw resources at it.
Right.
What we threw resources at was a wide receiver. We threw it at, and the thing is too, our front office sucked at drafting for years, so they would draft guys like Perea Jerry. Oh, let's fix the D line. Let's get Perea Jerry up in here. And stuff like that. So, I mean, I hate to drone on about it, but as he was saying, you have to dedicate it to it,
Yeah. And
basically.
like with Tyler Linderbaum or like a first round pick for offensive line, you really wouldn't need to kind of address anything anymore because you have your three guys with Jake Matthews, Chris Lindstrom, and Tyler Linderbaum. And then you have some free agents who you sign, and Jermaine Ifedi, who you're not planning on paying Caleb McGarry, and then you have Colby Cassette, and you're developing one of your depth pieces along. So you have like a guy who can semi stop the bleeding while you're mentoring one of your depth pieces. So that's kind of like the plan going forward because because the last regime screwed up with Caleb McGarry and didn't have a backup plan. So now what we're doing is we're saying, nah, I don't want to have two depth pieces starting to protect my new and also not as good quarterback for the semi future. That just doesn't make sense. You might as well just get one offensive lineman who you won't have to touch for I don't know how many years into the future, and then you're good. Like you
Well,
take
then you
Tyler
can go into
Linderbaum, you
free
won't touch
agency.
anyone.
Yeah, and you can go into free agency next year and like, oh, we don't have a right tackle. Well, we've got all this money. I'm sure there's going to be a guy on the market that.
Yeah,
can
worst
fulfill
things
that role.
worse. You just re-sign Jermaine Ifedi and call it a day. Like that's probably what I would do. Like you don't need to invest more draft capital after Tyler Linderbaum because there's not much to draft. Like you'd probably maybe draft a left tackle in like the fifth round or so.
Yeah.
But other than that, like you have a O-line for the future. You have a plan and a good plan at that.
If you did my plan and you get Akeem Aquanu or Evan Neal and Linderbaum,
That works too.
Yeah, it's a wrap. It's done. Like your offensive line is set for the next 5 years at least.
Right. And like I think the biggest thing that prohibits people from wanting to go any other position outside of defensive tackle is just the number of yards that we allowed this season. Which yes, it is bad, but more of that was more carries than actual being bad in those reps. Because like I said, we were middle of the pack in yards per carry.
But if we're just mauling kids and we have freaking 10, 15 minute drive, like we just drain clock all game and score touchdowns, and your wide receiver core isn't as big a deal because you're running the ball down people's throats and they basically have got to put people in the box to stop that, and then your receivers are going to have free reign. All they got to do is just beat the corner and they're open. Makes it easier on your quarterback because he can really play off play action and stuff like that, especially with Mariota, who's got some athletic ability. Can be a run threat there. You're taking another guy out of coverage because they're probably gonna have to account for Mariota potentially running the ball. And then your defense, like they ain't got to do much because they're rested. The teams are going to be more predictable because they're not going to have as much time to work their offense. So they're going to be passing it more than running it. And then your run defense is just going to be better because teams aren't running the ball on you.
So I want to touch on this comment from here about Elite saying he's worried about Linderbaum being another Garrett Bradbury because of his size. Let me tell you something about Tyler Linderbaum. He's an Iowa offensive lineman that pinned down Tristan Wirfs in wrestling.
Exactly. And on tape, it shows.
He does not have to worry about his size. He can still bulk up due to conditioning as well. Like I was worried about Dylan Parham because I thought that he was like 275 at guard. I was like, that's not going to fly.
Here's what I compare it. So Rashawn Slater last year, right? If you just looked at his size, which it wasn't as bad as people thought it was going to be, but he's not a bigger, imposing tackle, right? But he's got crazy technique, right? And when you got crazy technique, you can get away with some limitations because he knows how to leverage guys very well. He knows how to drive them out. And when you're talking about your center is not like going to be one-on-one with a lot of guys, right? He's not going to be head up with a ton of guys. He's going to get help from the guards. So he doesn't have to be as powerful. The problem with Bradbury was he was smaller. He's smaller than Linderbaum was, right? And he didn't have as good a technique. So then he struggled.
Right.
So
And it's like with Linderbaum, he's like what you want Matt Hennessy to be, but on steroids. Like he's very clean with how he's able to reach people in zone blocks. Like you don't even have to worry about it at all. You don't have to worry about him really getting pushed back all that much. You don't really want him running power, but I'm sure he could suffice at least in sustaining a block.
and he can add size. Like you can add size to that frame.
He's bigger. He looks bigger than what's his name, Matt Hennessy. Even though he's not as like too much bigger, but he's decent. He's not like where I'd say, oh yeah, that's kind of a weakness. No, he's good. He's good. And I think pass protection wise, he helps out the most. That's where I think that value comes in a lot too, because now you have a guy who can really help. You don't have to worry about him getting necessarily pushed deep inside the pocket. All you really might have to worry about is him facing really twitchy sub interior rushers, and I think that's fine for me. Like I'll take that versus like having to worry every player, getting pushed back.
Got a question from Eric Mack. He's saying, "Hey, what's up with Grady Jarrett?" I don't know. I mean, other than the fact that he got recently kicked out of a restaurant because he wasn't wearing a proper attire or whatever, which I just found that story straight.
That right there kind of blew me, bro.
Didn't like the mayor of Georgia also get kicked out of a restaurant for not wearing proper attire?
Which at that point, what even is proper attire?
Exactly. Grady, I think, is just he's had enough. He's tired. I think he's tired. I don't know, and that's what kind of makes this harder. Like if you're gonna get Jordan Davis, ideally you would want him next to Grady Jarrett, and you could still take Jordan Davis out or Grady Jarrett, but that's what you ideally want because iron sharpens iron. And it just help each other a lot more. But without Grady Jarrett, it lessens the effect of it lessens the effect.
Ultimately, a deal gets done with him, but that's my thinking on it.
Yeah, I think that they're done, and I think it's probably the best idea to trade him soon. Even though I love Grady Jarrett, I don't want to see him go, and I don't think it's a good idea to trade him if you don't have to, but it's looking like you might.
Well, here's the thing with him. Like, we have the franchise tag that we can use on him. So if we want to keep him, he doesn't have as much leverage right now because
that's true. But
the thing is, after what Grady Jarrett has done, are you really just gonna franchise tag him and hold him prisoner like that? Like,
no. You would franchise him to either tag and trade, or you would tag and trade. Tag along to get a long-term deal.
I wouldn't be surprised.
A lot of people, a lot of people are reading into. I don't think this is a like Julio situation or something like that where like he's sour. Like I don't think that. I mean, if you can prove to him in the next year or two, like that this next off season and stuff, that hey, we're moving towards being a competitive football team. Like I don't think he's going to be like, oh, well, I want out of here. Because we're getting a quarterback in 2023. That's my thinking. So this year is to build up and prepare for that, and then next offseason, because next offseason we got so much capital.
We really do. Like a lot of money. We can even know the Matt Ryan contract.
Yeah, we could have a San Diego Chargers type offseason.
Exactly. You can just go out and sign a defensive tackle next year, and not to mention there are guys in free agency that we could take. And let's just say we can't get those. There are definitely practice squad players that are released, and we can re-sign Mike Pennell, and that would be it.
Another thing too is that because of the COVID year, there was a bunch of other college players that didn't want to take this year and then had to either like redshirt or just like take the year off and come back and be eligible for this year too. So that's why it's even deeper than ever, because I'm starting to believe that once I look deeper into the rounds of the drafts and even after in the priority UDFAs, like you can still find legitimate starters just because they weren't available in the last draft. So
Right.
wherever we decide to go with the direction of like the first couple of rounds, like there is still a lot of talent across the board to be had. It's just because you're not hearing it, you just don't assume that there is any. But
Yeah.
that's
Right.
not the case. Like you can still like deep in like the ADPs and realize in the 300s, like, oh hey, like there's some guys that you can still like you can find a good wide receiver there, a good tight end there, a good defensive
And,
lineman there, a good linebacker there.
and you have no idea who's going to drop. Because there's going to be a
Exactly.
guy that we are anticipating to be taken in the first 2 rounds that's going to be there late day 3.
I'm expecting
It
that to
happens every
probably be
year.
like John
Yeah.
Mechie or David Bell or something like that.
You try to anticipate it, but it happens every year. Or you get like guys that like JOK last year that was supposed to be like
Yeah.
possibly top 10. Definitely people thought he was going to go like mid first. Well,
He
maybe
should have
late.
went top 10. Like that was actually kind of crazy.
Him and
Yeah.
Tevin Jenkins kind of.
Yeah,
Dude,
Tevin Jenkins was stupid.
dude.
Like I don't
I
understand.
mean, I
how
love Richie Grant, but if we'd have stayed there and taken Tevin Jenkins, I would have probably humped a chair. But
Me too. Like literally, I would have been good with that. I would have been good with that. I would have been like, yeah, we got our left guard.
yeah, dude,
Um,
I'm telling you, Tevin Jenkins was my boy back then.
I would have been screaming, Matt Ryan has protection. Thank you so much.
I mean, I love that we got Richie Grant. I don't regret that pick. Especially trading down. And then we got like I think all day with that pick that we acquired. But
yeah.
Tevin Jenkins would have been crazy.
Last question, and then we'll kind of wrap things up because we went a wee bit overboard. Champagne Bath. Basically, he's saying, hey, true or false, we have the worst offense in the NFL right now.
I mean, I wouldn't say that. If you look at the Packers, they literally have.
Well, they got Aaron Rodgers.
They got Aaron Rodgers, and that's it.
I mean,
Aaron Rodgers,
still got
Aaron Jones.
Yeah,
Aaron Jones.
Tonyan.
Yeah,
Randall Cobb.
I would more say like you got like the
Sammy Watkins.
They got opportunities to get more pieces.
You got the Jaguars right now, so there's that.
Oh no! You can't say the Jaguars. They got Christian Kirk. They paid him a bunch of money. Yeah. Christian Kirk is obviously the new D-Hop, right? That's what's going on.
Yeah,
no, that's an insult to Christian Kirk. He's obviously way better.
Oh yeah, he's goated. He's on Randy Moss.
We're not a good offense. I'll say that. Currently,
I mean, like they're gonna have ETN back. They're gonna have James Robinson still in the backfield. Trevor Lawrence is actually gonna have a head coach to have with him. They have Laviska Shenault, which I really like. They have.
I think he's on the trade market.
Possibly, but
I wouldn't say that
hasn't been done yet.
that we draft the offense though, because like we definitely need defense.
Yeah.
Someone saying the Lions might have the worst offense.
Yeah, they're the worst. They got
DeAndre Swift, TJ Hawkinson, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I do like that trio at least.
That's it.
Really. Their offensive line is really solid.
Okay, that is true. Their offensive line is good, but like
even
skill positions are quite raw.
Let's just say like we have the worst offense, right? That doesn't mean that they're going to go offense in the beginning of the draft, though. Like, if defense is the value, and I mean, the same token that we talked about having like a strong offense can protect your defense. If you bolster your defense, that can protect your offense because your offense doesn't have to do as much, doesn't have to score as many points. So it really just depends on where the value is, who we have a plan for bringing them in. Like I don't like broad statements like that
too.
Yeah, I don't like broad statements like that because that pigeonholes you into like drafting certain because my position on the draft is every position is a need if the value is.
It is.
Because you're
It like
drafting for the next 5 years. So we
right.
thought, last year, picking Kyle Pitts at 4, oh, we don't need receiver. We got Calvin
We
Ridley and
don't.
Julio Jones.
And then we needed it. Yeah.
Yeah, until we did. Yeah. In 1 year, one cat like 12 months ago.
We came
People were
from
saying
being
I was
like the
crazy.
best receiving core to like literally in shambles. Like
People
we're
were saying
literally
we needed to draft Patrick Surtain, because we needed corner help, and we didn't need receiver because we got Julio and Ridley. Well, look at that now. We've got a freaking all-pro freaking corner basically that didn't get all-pro, but he played like one.
Mm-hmm.
And then you need receiver, so it flipped on its head in a calendar year. So my thinking is with that is,
but it can still flip from the worst to the better too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, you don't look like, whenever you're looking at a draft, need is a tiebreaker. It is not a prerequisite to a draft pick.
Right.
You take the guy
The
that
best
you have
guy.
scouted and you think that guy is the best guy available. You take that guy.
I mean, if it came upon you, right?
Yeah, if there are two guys that are similarly graded for you, and one is a need, then yeah, you take the guy that's the need. But very rarely does that happen. Usually there's a clear-cut guy that you like as a coaching staff or a front office at that position.
Exactly. Like, Kyle Pitts wasn't a need at the time that we drafted him, before we knew Julio and Calvin really were going to do the stuff that they did. But I was even in the camp of, oh, we should probably go Penei Sewell, but then we went and got Kyle Pitts because he's literally the best person on the board. So it ended up working in our favor, because you never know what can happen. And honestly, if the best player on the board is available, you take it, because he's the best player on the board. He's good.
Yeah, I mean, the only time that I might pass on a guy if he's the best guy on my board is if I have a franchise quarterback and there's another really great quarterback sitting there, because I don't want that. I don't want to make that. I would still think about drafting him, because I'd be like, dude, we could trade him for crazy draft picks later, but you don't want to piss off. You don't want to create a toxic relationship between you and your quarterback. But that's the only that's only because you can't play two quarterbacks. You just can't, But I would definitely, in that case, I'd be calling up other teams, because seeing if they want to trade up, but for him. But other than that, and if we got Matt Ryan on, we had Matt Ryan on our roster last year, right? If there was a quarterback that was the guy, in my mind, yeah, you take him. Because you have what this year, where if you move on from Matt, now you have a quarterback.
Okay, so our quick last minute predictions that we would say about the draft. It could be about our team specifically, or something about the draft as a whole. However you want to start off with. I know I kind of shoved this upon you guys, but I'm sure you guys can think of something to say for this, and if not, I can probably provide an example first.
Predictions.
Trey, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Draft predictions. I'm gonna say there is a total of 16. No, let's not say 16. Let's say about. I say 10 to 15 combined wide receivers and edge rushers taken in the first 2 rounds. Kind of between picks 1 through 45.
Okay.
I think Kyle Hamilton falls to the 20s.
I agree with that.
Alex?
I think that we end up drafting Grant Dulcich from UCLA.
where?
More than likely, I mean, it might be in the second if I'm being quite honest, just because a lot of teams like him. But I don't know.
Yeah, I would hope for early round 3.
Yeah, I'd hope so too, but
But
it's more than likely going to be in the second.
we're doing a show next week right before the draft. Absolutely, and I think that's going to be like our finalized mock draft idea.
Oh yeah,
That maybe
Yeah, we
wanna
should do a mock
together.
draft that day. It'd be really
Oh,
cool
yeah.
to like trade picks, like trade off, like do a full mock, and
Oh
like
yeah,
trade,
that would work.
like if we had 4 of us in here, like take one, someone takes 1, 2, 3, 4, and just cycle through until we're
There you go. There's our idea.
That sounds like a plan. Yeah.
yeah. So,
We'll work it out a little bit as we go there. Or the story. There you go, Mike Free. Glad to see you here joining us. One last thing. Hey, I appreciate the fact that I can still look young while being 22. All right. I will take that to my grave for what it's worth.
yeah, try to look young when you turn 27. I know it's only 5 years difference, but it's a big 5 years.
Yeah. Hey, it's better than looking a lot older than you really are.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah, because like
at least I have that on my side.
when you hit your 40s, you're gonna look 30. So
For me, I say that there might be more cornerbacks than wide receivers taken in round 1. So that's going to be my last.
I can see that. Yeah, because you
That's-
could.
that's
I mean,
quite
you could
bold,
even get
actually.
like crazy things like Roger McCreary or something getting in the first round.
Maybe
Yeah,
Kyler Gordon. Maybe
yeah.
someone's high on Tariq Woolen.
Yeah, there's a lot
Woolen,
of
maybe,
there's a
yeah.
lot of corners that like some teams are gonna like this corner class. There's gonna be teams that grade the corner class could drastically different depending on how they view what they need at corner. You know.
I could see
Yeah,
Andrew
that's gonna be
Booth still going in the first.
Yeah, I mean he's got a lot of problems with his double hernias and whatnot, but I think the talent is still there.
Yeah.
You know, maybe take a flyer on him like Titans did with Caleb Farley.
Yeah, I think that's probably what someone is going to do. I think probably the Patriots, maybe.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that make sense?
Man, I really hate it for
like
Caleb Farley too, because he's a good player, dude. He's just got injury problems, dude.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap up our show. Thank you guys for tuning in. That's going to be our last thing. Hopefully, we kind of covered as many questions as you guys had as possible. And if not, well, there might be some more in between that. We'll go. One thing that I am looking forward to is because they wanted to have as much people as possible available for like the draft periods, like the actual days of the draft. So Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. I am going to try to be available as I can for all 3 of those days. So, and if I got any sort of control over who I can add and who I can, what we can do in between the drafts and in between the rounds and in between the pause breaks and something like that, I'll try to have a setup in that run. I don't know exactly what it'll look like, but just know that I'm looking to get that set up so I can be available for all 3 days. Just to kind of spread any wisdom I might have about a certain pick, just in case if anyone else isn't available then. So look forward to that. And then, of course, look forward to our last show next Wednesday, same time as we started this time. And again, you already know the focus of it. And yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a lot more topics as we go about afterwards, especially.
Yeah,
So,
it'll be real fun diving into who we actually get instead of like, well, if this happens.
yeah, a lot of our questions will be answered.
Yeah, so.
But then with those we'll have more questions. So let's just.
Oh yeah.
Stay
With
focused.
only answers, you get more questions.
Yeah, but see that at least then you know who's on the team. Like you know, like that's the guy we got to talk about.
Right.
He's
It's going to be either a happy day or a sad day. So we'll see.
Of course. All right. Well, thank you guys, and see you next time.
See ya.
Catch y'all later.
Deuces.